Okay, so to those joining us, this is Middle East Eye here in London, currently live with journalist Bilal Abdul Kareem, who's currently based in Idlib, northern Syria. We're just going to talk to you about the current situation in Idlib today, Bilal. Could we start with you describing the situation in Idlib this week? What have you seen?
Well, if we're going to talk about this week, there have been numerous airstrikes. Now, when I say numerous, I'm not talking about in the tens. I'm not even talking about in the hundreds. I'm talking about pushing upwards to 1,000. And the Syrian Observatory has quoted something to the tune of 1,500 airstrikes over the past 10 days, something along those lines. There have been 10 hospitals which have been destroyed, 11 mosques, more than 200 killed, more than 300 injured, and those are conservative estimates. This is what the situation is like. There are planes that are buzzing overhead, and in a nutshell, no one feels safe here. No, and keeping in mind this is all in the wake of the whole Escalating conference and agreement and so on and so forth.
Can you tell us a bit more about the conference? Do you think it's serving its purpose?
Well, I think that the conference served the purposes of the Assad regime and its ally, Russia, and Turkey. I don't think that there was anything in the Escalating agreement which was beneficial for the Syrian people, because here's the situation. First of all, the most powerful group in northern Syria is HTS, also known as Hayat Tahrir Sham. They were not invited to be a part of this peace process, if we want to call it that. So take that and put that on the side. In addition to that, the Escalating agreement calls for a cessation of hostilities. Now, as you can see, there has been no cessation of hostilities. The bombs and rockets are raining down, but ultimately what Russia and Assad wanted was for there to be a cooling down period in these rebel-held territories. Therefore, they could shift their military resources towards Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa to fight ISIS. And then, of course, after that, they would be bringing their planes back to fight here in the Idlib territories. So it's just about consolidating their strengths and their efforts. Because the question would have to come about, why would Russia, who is doing the bombing, why would you need an agreement to stop doing the bombing? Just stop doing it.
Well, Russia denies targeting civilians. Is this credible based on what you've seen?
I don't think that anyone, and no pun intended to you or anyone else who might have, believed that, but I don't think that anybody with a half of ounce of intelligence, as my mother used to say, could possibly believe that Russia hasn't been targeting civilian areas. It is about the stupidest thing that you could imagine. Just look at the pictures. It's, a school was hit in Haram just a few hours ago. The city of Idlib, which is packed with refugees from the other places where the people were run out because of Russian airstrikes. And they're not targeting. So that burned up boy that was on the ground, the people that we covered, the hospital, which has been hit numerous times. I mean, the reason why these statements can be made with a straight face is because the news media has been busy with the latest Trump quote against Kim Jong-un, and therefore they haven't been reporting these massacres. So therefore the Russians are sitting there saying, hey, nobody's reporting it. We can say anything that we want. And who's going to say anything different? The black guy in Syria from OGN? Ha, we got more resources than him. And the reality is that they certainly do.
I just want to touch on a point you've just made. You said a school got hit today, and you've also mentioned about a hospital. Could you tell us more specifically as well, where are these bombs falling?
Well, the one I'm speaking about is in Haram, which is a northernmost town on the Turkish border. In addition to that, as I made mention, 10 hospitals have been destroyed. 11 masjids or mosques have been destroyed. You don't get these types of structures are known because it's open to the public. Because if you have the greatest hospital but no one knows where it is, then it's not very useful. So therefore, hospitals have to be out there and visible so that the people can go to get the medical care that they need. And the Assad regime and their Russian counterparts are taking advantage of this situation, and they are bombing the hospitals. They clearly see that no one did anything regarding Myanmar and the Rohingya. So what is the deterrent? There's no deterrent for the Russians. It's as simple as that. There's no deterrent.
Well, do you think the situation has been aggravated by the HTS offensive? Do you think it's made it more difficult for civilians in Idlib?
No, and I will tell you what I mean by that. Firstly, as I made mention, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, was not invited. Now, exactly how are you going to negotiate a peace agreement or a peace settlement or a de-escalation, and you are not inviting the most powerful faction that controls the most territory? It's ridiculous. I mean, someone might want to say, okay, well, they're terrorists. Without getting involved in an answer whether they are or they aren't, the reality of the situation is like Yitzhak Rabin said, you don't make peace with your friends, you make it with your enemies. But when they feel like they're just going to try to steamroll over a legitimate part of the opposition, gambling that everything is going to work out because Turkey is saying that they're going to come in and occupy Idlib, and that's a different topic if you want to talk about that. The reality of the situation is that those who are going to pay the price are here in Syria. It's not going to be the people in Moscow. It's not going to be the people in Ankara. And it's not going to be somebody from Canada or whatever the case is. So they feel like they've got this room that they can sort of try some things out. And the reality of the situation is that given the apathy from the news media around the world, given the backdrop of what just took place in Myanmar and continues to take place, and all you get is just condemnation after condemnation and no action to back it up, once again, what's the deterrent for them?
Could you tell us a bit more about your thoughts in terms of Turkey's involvement? You've mentioned it a bit briefly, but could you tell us a bit more?
Turkey has been stating here recently, the Turkish president, Erdogan, has been saying that Turkish troops are going to enter into Idlib. They're going to maintain internal security in Idlib, and the Russians are going to maintain external security to act as a buffer between regime forces and rebel forces. The first thing that anybody has to ask themselves a question is, how is it remotely, and I would love for people to answer this question if they possibly could, how is it possible that the country, meaning Russia, who is launching these attacks on civilians, how in the world could they be looked at as a guarantor of peace? How is this possible? And I would really like for people to try to answer that, because I don't think that people are as deluded as the Russian government wants them to believe in thinking that they are not hitting any civilians. You could just go to www.ogn.news and take a look. Back to Turkey, their involvement, if their plan is to bring Turkish armor and military forces into Idlib, there's a reality. I talk to rebel fighters all the time. I see them all the time. The reality of the situation is that there will be a resistance, and they will